Okay, let's try this again. Yes. Okay. Well, I don't know. Starting on historic, and things are gonna get scary. Oh, I am going to need to have chat up. Please tell me that I do not screw with that. Okay, good, it didn't. Let me see here. Yay. Okay. Hello. If you're watching this, you've probably never heard of me before. But we gotta start somewhere. I go by pretends2know. If you seen Twitch, you may have seen me speedrun video games. One thing I do in my spare time, and I need to move this over here. Well, there are no second takes in a live stream. Is, well, you mess up with web cameras. Whatever. Well, good news is I can always do a take two. This needs to go that way. Warmer. Hang on. Well, we're gonna do a take two on this, so. Alright. Well, changing your setup just a little bit makes things all the difference in the world. So, yeah, my name is pretends2know. Well, that's my username. I generally stream to Twitch, but I'm streaming to YouTube because I am not doing a speed run tonight, and I figured I'd talk Magic the Gathering. I consider myself semi-competitive. I generally try to reach the top 10% in Mythic each month in Arena. That brings us to why we're here. It's because, you know, big changes coming to Arena in the next 12 hours. So, Alchemy is happening. For those that don't know, because I assume you're new to the game, Alchemy is going to be a new digital-only format, or live format for Magic the Gathering, where they're going to use digital mechanics to take advantage of Arena. They're going to do digital mechanics so they can, push cards beyond paper capacity, and they're also going to rebalance cards so that way they can shake up with standard. So the good here, I believe, is going to be the card rebalancing. There's a number of cards out there that people are just exhausted with in standard. All runs Epiphany comes to mind, and I've heard and honestly felt a little bit that, the standard format is solved and the word stale has been thrown around a number of times. Rebalancing cards, because, other than all runs Epiphany, I couldn't really point to a specific card and say that card is so broken it needs to be banned. However, there's a number of cards that I'd be like, that card has gone above and beyond in this format. Examples include Most of mono white, especially Thalia. Well, Thalia's, if mono white wasn't overperforming, Thalia would be overperforming. So it's a little bit of a balancing act with her. But how this is going to affect standard is, it sounds like we're getting a rotation. We're getting new cards injected into the format, and old cards are getting retinkered. All of the power up cards have felt underwhelming to me so far. So I'm not really worried about those. And honestly, I don't think they are either, because if you overpower a card, it's going to make things awkward if you have to power it back down. But yeah, I do believe rebalancing cards is a good thing that's going to be happening going forward. Now the worrisome is all the this going on, the new digital only cards. The big reason is this is going to it's going to make Arena more expensive on the front end. Like, I did the math. If you want to get a playset of a rare card, and you don't want to just rely on pulling packs, that is going to be 24 packs, which in terms of gems is $29.97, so $30. So that's $30 per playset of wild cards. And I believe there is a legitimate worry that will price some players out of the game. We all know what we're signing up for. So I think it's going... So I don't know how that's going to... I don't know how that's going to affect the competitive base. But requiring more money to avoid the FOMO aspect of alchemy is probably not going to draw more. It's probably not going to draw more players to the game that weren't already invested in the games, and I can't see it not creating a burnout effect amongst the lower budget players. So that's one concern. The nerfs, from what I've experienced with other cards being nerfed in other games, is I don't think there'll be too much of a problem. And Wizards so far seems to have rather have gone not far enough with some of these nerfs, because they don't want to nerf these cards into oblivion. And the reason they don't want to nerf these cards into oblivion is that's the same thing as banning those cards. And Wizards having gone on record saying they're not going to refund wild cards means that if they make cards useless that we invest in, it's only going to generate more of a backlash than the backlash that it's already created. One thing I would say that hasn't been that my position. Sorry, this is what I get for while I've been streaming for a while. This is the first time I've been talking to a camera broadcast wise, and this isn't podcast format, so I can't edit any of this out. Anyway, getting back to my train of thought, I do believe there is a different solution to this than wild cards. And the reason I came with this is because I'm not convinced rebalancing cards means that they should be refunded in wild cards, but there should be more than nothing. My thoughts on it is that if Wizards of the Coast sets out to power down a card, you should get dust added to your treasure chest. How much will depend upon the rarity of the card, but what that trend, but it would have to be somewhat substantial, because that would be because it would be because it would need to be noticeable. Also, one other thing is that if something like this was implemented, Wizards should also make the treasure chest visible at all times. So that way, if they power down a card, like, you're not necessarily getting refunded for it, but you're getting progress towards the treasure chest wild cards. That's generally where I stand on that. As for the cards themselves, like, I could go over some of them really quick. Rahilda seems like they're taking another stab at Robber of the Rich. And this time they made it legendary, so that way you can't stack them up. It's definitely worse than Robber of the Rich, though, because First Strike is great. In Mono Red, Haste is better. Garruk ramps. This is what I'll say about Draft altogether. Is I honestly don't really care what the cards in a draft spellbook are, because it is a similar concept to Companions. You're taking something that wasn't in the game and you're adding it to the game. There's definitely going to be better spell books and spells within those spell books than others. But one thing is that drafting will depend on the other effects. And like Garruk's, it's pushed because, like, -1 draft Garruk Watcher from the Watcher of the Wild spellbook and put it onto the battlefield. That's a companion. I mean, whatever. And honestly, it's even stronger than a companion because there's no counter magic involved. If Garruk hits the battlefield, you have to stifle the plus away. Or the minus away. Sorry, the plus is a little ramp effect. So yeah, Garruk is strong, and the fact that the spell book complements it. Let's see here. Antique Collector, power 2 or less. Spell can crush against the creature dies. Antique Collector is, yeah. I'm going to be saying pushed a lot, so I need to work on my vocabulary a little bit. Because early game, it's unblockable. I mean, later in the game, it's a life insurance policy. And I believe Jim Davis, there's a little bit of Billy Mays in this. It's like, freshly games, when this creature dies, you may shuffle it into its own library if it's in your graveyard. But wait! There's more. If you do, investigate. I don't know how strong that is, but I mean, like, I'm trying to think of 2 drops that Mono Green needs or has. Honestly, this slides right in because the best true drop off the top of my head is the Snow Mana Dork and Ranger class. And Ranger class has been outclassed with bounce spells because it gets rid of the token. And the ramp elf is the ramp snow elf is it's fine. Also, this has a later game use because it gives your board full of creatures a second life and compensates you if your board gets wiped. See here, Geistpack Alpha. When Geistpack Alpha dies, seek a permanent card with mana value equal to the number of lands you control. Neat. This is going. The strength of Geistpack Alpha will depend honestly on your ability to get rid of it yourself. Also, 5/4 trample is nothing to sneeze at, but to also point out, this card already exists in Strixhaven. It's honestly stronger because it's an enter the battlefield trigger that learns, and it's a 5/4 for 4 with trample. So this one, I mean, if oh gosh, I can't remember the card's name at the moment, but if that only competed with fringe playability in the 4-drop slot, I'm not sure how far Geistpack Alpha will get. Knock on wood that's the prediction I get wrong out of everything. Grizzled Huntmaster enters the battlefield. You may execute from hand. Okay. This is a Grizzled Huntmaster. It's a ability. I don't forget if there's a full cycle of it or because there's at least another one where you can exile certain cards from your. You can exile cards from your hand, and then exile the other copies, and then you get to conjure a card from outside of the game or seek into your hand to replace them, and it's a means of basically letting you sideboard. I think this will see play because, 4 power, it lets you build a wish board without lesson cards, and the lesson cards derive their strength from the fact they come in from outside of existence. Grizzled Huntmaster takes powerful cards, puts them into existence, and these cards weren't created with the same restrictions that Learn had in mind. Hinterland Chef. It's a draft card. It's a draft from a spell book. It puts it into your hand and gives it the ability to be a food. That's fine. I don't think it's going to be the strongest draft card in there. 3/3 for 3. Like, it depends. Like, this is probably the only one where I'll say it depends what you're drafting. But most of the time, I'd probably if I'm going with draft, I'd probably go with Garruk. Hallowed Wrangled. When Hallowed Wrangled enters the battlefield, seek a land card, discard a land, conjure card named Hallowhenge Beast into your hand. By the way, that is a 5/5 for 5. You may also activate this ability while Hollow Wrangler is in your graveyard. Basically, it's a mana. This card is probably going to see play because it's a mana flood fixer. You turn your mana flood into a flood of 5/5s, which in most situations is more useful than being flooded on mana. So I expect to run into that one. Also being costed above rate, or also being costed below rate means that it's going to see it. It could see play just for that alone. Like I expect be like best in show or whatever. Oh, careful how much I steal from Jim. Loon Pine Harbingers. Trample Haste 4/4. I mean 4/4 for haste. That's immediately going to replace the Moose that Mono Green's currently playing. Enters the battlefield with X counters on, where X is the number of turns you've begun since it was foretold. Yeah, honestly, I think it's better than the Moose because the Moose that transforms into an 8/8 that gives everything else +1/+1 and trample. I have not seen anybody make that transformation. And this is just a 4/4 that you can that you can foretell on turn 2, and then when turn 6 rolls around, like it just gets stronger. So yeah, I will see something. Ravenous Pursuit. Target creature control does damage to target creature you don't control. Choose a creature card in your hand. Partially gets +++, whereas the amount of excess damage dealt. I mean, it's a strong card, but I've always leaned more towards being a control mage with value. So it's a 1-for-1 that makes something stronger. Like, aggro mages should probably... Actually, yeah, it's pricey play because it's a 1-for-1, and I'm not sure how often it will line up though. So I don't see how an extra mana though will dethrone a Blizzard Brawl. Key to the Archive enters the battlefield tapped. 4 mana. When you enters the battlefield, draft a card from Key to the Archive spellbook, then discard a card. Add 2 mana and any combination of colors. It's fine. This definitely feels like a historic Brawl card more than a standard card. I think it will see play because I think I've heard this has the strongest spell book. And honestly, being colorless means it probably has the most flexible spell book. So it plays. Also it's another card since it doesn't specify land or non-land. Can help fix a flood. People play the Celestis to loot through their hands, and this will see play too. Wickerwing Effigy Defender. Look at the top card of your library and tell you to cast creatures from the top of your library. I mean, this could go in mono white, but like really what I see in this is what's that druid? Autumn Augur of Autumn. Augur of Autumn does the same thing. Granted, you have to jump through more hoops. And this one's the drawback is your creature becomes a 1/1 bird. I mean, if it has a strong enough effect on it, that's not a drawback. But I'm trying to think, because most cards that want the all your creatures have flying, cool. But if Augur of Autumn hasn't seen much play, it's been mostly fringe. I don't see how this one will be beating that one, the two. Settle the Wild. Seek a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Then seek a permanent card with mana value equal to the number of lands you control. Cool. Like, it's going to be great in the early game, worse in the late game. Depends on where you curve out. But even like in ramp decks, this card will be a 3 mana rampant growth after like 7 mana, because most ramp decks cap out at Hullbreaker Horror or Cyclone Summoner and Coma. Tenacious Pup. Tenacious Pup enters the battlefield. You gain 1 life. When you cast your next creature spell, that creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, a trample counter, and a vigilance counter. That could be a print card. The reason it's not is because there's so many counters on it, and that would basically this is a digital card because it's so complex. As for the card itself, honestly, I'm kind of meh on it. A 1/2 for 1. It'll stop most things in mono white for, a turn. It'll stop, and it trades with it either blocks most mono white turn 1 plays, or it trades with that spirit that's a 2/1. Having a stronger creature with vigilance, trample, and a +1/+1 counter, it's nice. This is definitely lowballing it, because the abilities I would want is can't be countered and a hexproof counter. But that's why this is an uncommon. And this is also why I'm not in card design. Soul Stealer Axe. Equipped creature has trample. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, seek a card with mana value equal to the damage. Yeah, I can definitely see this shaking up some decks. Most, like mono white, most of their creatures, their powers match up to their converted mana cost. So yeah, like stick this on Athalia, swing in, deal 2, seek out any number of cards. And also with even the nerfed oh gosh, what's the priest's name? The cleric with the +1/+1 counters. You can control who the power of the creature that's swinging with somewhat efficiency. Okay. Seek the Wilds, Garrick. Ravenous Pursuit. Target control, he's damaged. Oh, wait, no, I already looked at that one. Okay, let's look at the other cards. Captain Eberhart, double strike. Spells cast among cards you drew this turn cost 1 less to cast. Spells cast from among cards your opponent drew this cost 1 more to cast. This is a card that gets progressively worse as the game persists or continues. Because like the big thing about this one is that the double strike. Like it will. I shouldn't underestimate that much, because between Thalia and Spellbinder, like taxing your opponent, like Wizards is definitely pushing death and taxes into standard, and he'll help. Cards that you drew. It might help you double spell a little bit sooner, but like where this will be the most useful is decks that curve out, that you untap, you draw, and you could already cast your whole hand anyway. Ethereal Escort. Whenever Escort enters the battlefield or attacks, choose a card in your hand. It perpetually gains lifelink. I can see that one in Historic because life gain always needs more life gain. And honestly, sticking life gain on a Johnny Primate works. This feels more like statistics shows that lifelink's popular on Arena, which, by the way, it is. So that's where I see that one. And I'm not sure if I would consider that a mythic, but I'll believe them. Geist of Regret. Just battlefield, put a random instant card in your graveyard, and then a random sorcery card in from your library into your graveyard. Whenever you cast an instant story from your graveyard, copy of the spell, you may choose new targets for the last copy. Cool. I mean, if flashback or this is probably going to be better in Historic because you can Torrential Gear Hulk and Mixus Mastery both feed into this strategy. Actually, it might be too expensive for that. But if it becomes something that comes up enough, yeah, Geist is great. If it doesn't, it won't. And its mana cost is probably a little up there. Gutman, Pactman, Servant, Legendary Demon, Blind Death Touch. Whenever Gutmorn enters the battlefield, each player discards a non-land card. Whenever a player discards a card during your turn, you may choose another. They choose another player. That player conjures duplicate that card into the cannon, potentially gains. So yeah, discard just got a new lord, like Tiny Bones and Terragrid. They're going to take a backseat to that, and I'm not sure I'm looking forward to this in Historic Brawl. Okay. Ishkana Broodmother. Other stories can only plus SL2 cards from your graveyard. Draft a card from Ishkana's Broodmother spellbook. It's a Spider Lord. It drafts spider cards. And it does it continuously. Like, if you have cards to feed from your graveyard, it refills your hand. So I think just on that, it will see some play. Ogar, Devoted Assistant. In your upkeep, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your graveyard. Yeah. Whenever a creature card is put into your graveyard from your library or hand, it potentially gains when this card leaves your graveyard, create a zombie token. That's tapped. Yes, because while it leans towards Reanimator, I mean, Search for Iskanta still sees play. And I think this will probably show up in Historic. It depends on removal, because it also dies to Fatal Push, and it has to survive a turn cycle, so I may have spoke too soon. Beginning of your end step, I saw one target creature card from your graveyard. If you do, seek a card with mana equal to the mana value of the card +1. That card can potentially against menace. It's a Birthing Pod. Birthing Pod effects tend to find a way. This will probably find a way too. Rahildia, Wanted Cutthroat. First strike, deals combat damage to a player, exile non-land card from the library at random, and during the attack turn so yeah, it's Robber of the Rich, but for wolves or werewolves, and a few more stipulations. But wait, there's more. It also has double strike. If it goes Nightbound and can do the same thing. So yes, it will see play. 4 I don't know of. Generally, my rule of thumb with legends you want to see a lot of is you see three of them, so that way you don't clog up. Tybalt, Wicked Tormentor, add double red. Draft a card from Tybalt, Wicked Tormentor's Spellbook, then exile it until end of turn. You may cast that card. It's a +1 ability that refunds mana, and I know in the spellbook there's at least one 2-mana creature, so that means it also creates a blocker for him. That alone puts him in the realm of potentially competing with Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. Teferi's probably still better than this, but 5 mana, refunds 2 mana, gives you a +1 conditionally. And then from there, it's all gravy. I guess one thing as a side note is they've really pushed Tybalt these past few years after, I don't know who got tired of Tybalt being a meme after his weak card, but I honestly wish they would have doubled down on that rather than trying to say, no, he's a strong one now. Okay, other +1. Tybalt, which deals 3 damage to target creature or playwalker unless control has Tybalt deals 3 damage to them. If they do, you may discard a dart. If you do, draw a card. So, rule of thumb with those sorts of choices is generally you don't like them because giving your opponent the choice, they will always choose the worst one for you. If you're at 20 life and trying to snipe Athalia, if they're at 20 life and you're trying to snipe Athalia, that feels bad. If they're at 3 life, I mean, that's when it starts putting in work with sniping their creatures, but like at that point, I don't see that helping that much. So, and getting to loot, I mean, that's getting to loot if they take it to the face is fine. Honestly, this is probably one of the first times I've seen one of the Billy Mays, but wait, there's more. It's like, okay. And then -X, create X 1/1 red devil creatures tokens. When this creature dies, deals 1 damage to any target. That's fine for an ultimate, but like the big thing with Tybalt is going to be the draft +1. Absorb energy, counter target spell. Creature cards in your hand that share a type with the card special of the game. This spell costs 1 less to cast. Control Mirror Breaker. That's pretty much what I see because most aggro decks don't run counter magic. And against counter, so honestly, this feels like a sideboard card. Angel of Eternal Dawn. When Angel it becomes day, it can't become night. Your opponent casts spells with mana greater than the number of turns they have begun. So yeah, going on with Death and Taxes is in standard. This card is in standard too. So probably also help. This will probably rock Historic more because like most Eerie Ultimatum decks and Dragonstorm decks try to go off on turn 4. And with this, you can't storm or combo off because they cost way too much mana. So this is that's a historic bomb right there. How much play it will see honestly depends on how prevalent combo is, and then after whether or not combo becomes prevalent, it will depend on whether, like, if it shoots down combo enough, people will take it out. So and then combo can sneak back in until people put it back in. So yeah, that's a historic shaker. Antique collector. Antique collector can't block creatures. Can't. Oh, I'd already reviewed that one. Armed scavenger. At the beginning of your upkeep, draft a card from Armed Scavenger spellbook. Then exile until end of turn. You may play that card. Okay. Hope the draft book's worth it, because you're not going to be playing from your hand if you. Well, actually, no. It gives you an extra card you could play. So I take that back. It's a conditional +1, but so we'll see. Instant target creature card in your graveyard potentially gains exile this card from your graveyard, shuffle it into your library, create a token that's a copy of it, except for it's a 4/4 zombie. Activate only as a sorcery. Neat. Unburial Rites just got a new friend or a competition. Destroy all creatures. Creatures in your hand perpetually get +1/+1. If White and Selesnya aggro decks need to clear the board, they're already in deep trouble. Begin anew might see sideboard play, but it's not something that I've seen, in my experience, aggro really wants, even against a clogged aggro board. Blood Rage Alpha bonus, choose one. Another target wolf fights a creature you don't control. When you cast your next wolf, it gains. When this creature enters the battlefield, it fights. Okay. Neat. Werewolves can have another removal spell on a creature. Good for them. City Stalker, Connoisseur, Death Touch, and enters the battlefield. Tournament discards the greatest amount of cards in their hand. Create a blood token. At 4 mana, I think this will see some play, but and probably in standard. Historic has Thoughtseize. Clone Crafter. When Clone Crafter enters the battle, conjure 2 and random creature card in your opponent's library in your hand. It perpetually gains. You may spend mana of any color of this spell. Relying on your opponent for cards is a meme. Go for it. I hope you don't get burned. Conduit Current. Conduit Current deals 3 damage to each creature. Choose an instant story card in your hand. Protection against this spell would deal non to a opponent player. It deals that much damage +2 instead. So it's a board wipe that also juices up one of your burn spells. Neat. Yeah. It's pushed. Seek 3 non-land cards, then non-land cards in your hand. Discover the formula. Seek 3 non-land cards, then non-land cards in your hand. Perpetually gain. This spell costs 1 less to cast. Six mana. It's fine. It ramps your hand in the late game. It refills your hand. Generally when you need it to. I could see it being, one off of Divine Purge. Exile artifact creatures with mana value 3 or less. They perpetually gain. This spell costs 2 more to cast. This permanent enters the battlefield attack. For as long as they remain in exile, its owner may play it. This I could see mono white playing as a field clearer before the Selesnya one. Specifically ones with specifically decks with mono white with a bunch of ETB triggers. So go nuts. It deals 2 damage. Okay, Electrostatic Blast. Electrostatic Blast deals 2 damage to any target. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play one of those cards until end of turn. Okay. So it turns one of your spells into a double spell. Yeah, for 2 mana. For 2 mana, that gives you some value. Early game, it's not an early game card though, so now I probably look forward to getting hit with it. When it's desire another human enters the battlefield and a conjure card named Utility Knife onto the battlefield. This ability only triggers once each turn. Sure. I don't know what Utility Knife does. I'm pretty sure it's an equipment card. So basically it lets you gradually buff your team. So seems good. Forsaken Crossroads enters the battlefield tapped. Choose a color as it enters the battlefield. When it enters the battlefield, scry 1. If you weren't the starting player, you may untap Forsaken Roads instead. Add 1 mana of the chosen colors. Wizards is going to need to do more if they want to reward people for being stuck on the draw. But this is a start, so we'll see if anything happens with that. Frenzied Geist Blaster, Prowess. When it enters the battlefield, there are 20 more instant sorceries. Summon cards in your graveyard, hand, and library. You may discard if you card. If you do, seek an instant or sorcery card. Yeah, trade a land for one of those cards. Seems fine. Also 2/2 for 2. It's on rate. Geist Channeler enters the battlefield. Choose an instant or sorcery card in your hand with mana value 3 or greater. Perpetually gains. This spell costs 2 less to cast. Costs 2 less to cast. Considering what was it? Discover the Formula. I could see this card seeing some play. Trying to think of other 3 or greater. Yeah, also Divide by 0. Trying to think of just blue at the moment. All Runs Epiphany. Even nerfed. So yeah. Get Draw. It looks a lot stranger than it did initially. And its initial outing. Beginning of each combat, this on tap. An opponent may sacrifice a creature if they do. Seek a land, put it onto the battlefield tap. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under control, it perpetually gains Golgari. Sacrifice this land, draw a card. So yeah. And it has minutes. Yeah, this card is going to see some play because even though it puts your opponent in the position of do you take a choice in your opponent's hands, what they're choosing is whether or not to ramp you. And even if they don't ramp you, like, the choice is still is a 6/6 that has to be double blocked. Let's see here. Inquisitor's Captain. Vigilance. Whenever it enters the battlefield, if there are 20 more creature cards, mana 3 or less mana cards you can hand or library, seek 2 creature cards to mana value 3, put 1 into your battlefield, shuffle the other into your library. Oh boy. Mono White just got Collected Company in white on a stick. Hooray. Mono White will at least start out ruling alchemy. Lupine, Harbinger, already read that. Obsessive Collector, flying war 2, deals combat to a damage layers. Seek a card, mana value equal to the number of cards in your hand. Personally, I'm a bigger fan of Curious Obsession, but it guarantees you won't get a land unless you have no cards in hand. So, and even then. When Ominous Traveler enters the battlefield, draft a card from Ominous Traveler's spellbook. That card potentially gains you may spend mana as to cast this spell, and when this Cast this spell, return a creature named Honest Traveler you control to its owner hands. So, okay. I think it'll be fine. Honestly, it has to get to the late game for it to be good. Patience 0. Damage isn't removed from creatures your opponent controls during cleanup steps. Zombies will play it. Zombies will love it. Also, if you splash green, you have a reason to use fight spells that don't necessarily win the fight. Menace, or Predatory Sludge. Menace. When Predatory enters the battlefield, choose a permanent you don't control. When the chosen permanent is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, conjure a card named Predatory Sludge into your hand. Mono black kills lots of things. This will help. By the way, for the bold people, choose lands. Go after those. Sanguine Brushstroke. When Sanguine Brushstroke enters the battlefield, create a blood token and conjure a card named Blood Artist onto the battlefield. When you sacrifice a blood token, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Oh boy, Aristocrats is now in blood. Congratulations. I think it will see play. They're definitely trying to push blood tokens up. I don't know if this will do it, but Blood Artist saw plenty of play, and so now you have the Blood Artist for creatures and blood tokens. I could see some hope for that. Sap Vitality. Deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Choose a creature card in your hand. It potentially gains +3/+0. It goes into a specific deck, but that specific deck would probably rather gain 3 life, to be honest. But I'm trying to think of what card could use +3/+0. I'm sure they're out there. Guardian Evangel enters the battlefield. Conjure card named onto the hand. Discard that card at the beginning of the next instant. When Guardian Evangel enters the battlefield, tap target permanent you don't control. Okay, so you play 1, and then it encourages you to conjure and cast as many as you can. If it had haste, it'd be great. As is, this is a card you don't want in your opening. Well, a 3/1. It's a card that's bizarre, that does different things throughout the game. A 3/1 beater, good. A 3/1 beater in the late game that taps a bunch of things. A handful of 3/1 beaters that taps things down. It could break a mirror. Sinister Reflection. Conjure Duke of each of 2 non-creatures you control into your hand. Yeah. Blue's going to want this because it allows the... Well, it's a bad top deck. But if it's not a top deck... So yeah, the bad top deck just sort of soured me to the card, but it allows you to run a few creatures. It allows your creature count to be a little more flexible. Slayer's Bounty. When Slayer bounces into the battlefield, look at the creature cards in your target opponent's hand. When you sacrifice Slayer Bounties or another clue, draft a card named from Slayer's Bounty. Sacrifice Slayer Bounty, draw a card. Cool. I think the big thing about it is it makes clues a divination rather than just a draw 1. And I don't know how deep into Clue Tribal that we're going to get, but that in of itself, the fact that it works with itself means that it will. I think it will see some play. Suntail Squadron. Conjure a card named Suntail Hawk into your hand. If you have fewer than 7 cards, repeat this process. I think Suntail Hawk's a flyer, so getting 7 of those, or up to 7 of those into your hand, like, that honestly sounds brutal in the right hands. Okay, Tireless Angler. When an island enters the battlefield under your card, draft a card from Tireless Angler's spellbook. Landfall, generate a card. Like, Tireless Tracker is one of the best creatures in the game, and you have to do an extra step to get the card. So, Tireless Angler probably is going to show up. Tauros Disciple attacks, conjure 4 cards named Lightning Bolt into your library, then shuffle. Yes. Burn decks don't want to mana flood, and stacking your deck with more and more copies of a burn spell, of the best burn spell in the game, is a great way to dilute the possibility. Just, make sure you have enough lands before you do it. Town Razor Tyrant enters the battlefield. Target land you don't control loses abilities and gains at the beginning of your upkeep. Except mana abilities. At the beginning of your upkeep, this permanent deals 2 damage unless you sacrifice it. I think Strider Stone's going to play that card. I'm not sure how good non-basics are right now, though. Like, it's a 4/4 flying that turns lands into burn spells that if you don't sacrifice them, you're giving your opponent a choice again. So I think it will see some play, but it's another one of those cards is where you're giving your opponent a choice and they will choose the one that works best for them. Draw 2, or Unexpected Conversion. Draw 2 cards, then you may exile an instant or sorcery card from your hand. If you do, search your hand or library for any number of cards with the same name. Exile them, then shuffle. Seek an instant or sorcery card for each card exiled from your hand this way. Basically, you are getting rid of silver bullets for more generic cards in things. Like, for example, you got a Fading Hope and a Control Mirror and a creatureless Control Mirror. Unexpected Conversion, get rid of your Fading Hopes. CGB is going to play that. Probably a lot. Veteran Ghoul Caller. Menace. Whenever your card in your graveyard is put into your hand, conjure a duplicate of that card into your hand. That card would be amazing if cards that put cards into your hand were amazing. Generally, it's Eternal Witness and a few others, but it's a card that requires other cards to be good, and the effect of those abilities generally don't make the cut. So this one probably won't either. Angel of Unity, Flying Lifelink. Whenever Angel of Unity enters the battlefield, or you cast a party spell, choose a party creature card in your hand. It perpetually gains +1/+1. Uncommon. Makes sense. Break Expectations. Target player reveals all cards with mana value 2 or greater in their hand. You may choose a card from among those cards, exile that card. If it was exiled, that player drafts a card from Break Expectations spellbook and reveals it. I hope the card you exile is better than the card they get in return. I'm not sure why you need to do this way, because there's the Cleave card that honestly does this better, but we'll see. Seems like something you do. If there's a limited format for this, that card makes a lot more sense. Bitter Blast. Creatures and planeswalkers your opponent's control protection game. This permanent would die, exile its stand. Instead, Brittle Blast deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Yeah, there's a number of death triggers you want to deal with, so it's a 3 cost 5 damage card. It'll see some play, but there's better cards out there unless the situation calls for otherwise. Cursebound Witch. Cursebound Witch dies. Draft a card from Cursebound Witch's spellbook. Cool. Replace a card upon death. Faithful Disciple. Vigilance. When Faithful Disciple dies, draft a card from... That's the same card, but this one is better. Fearsome Whelp. At the beginning of your end step, each dragon card in your hand perpetually gains. This card costs 1 less to cast. Dragon players rejoice because if your opponent, because it only has to live through your end step before your dragon cards start getting even better. Kindred Denial. Counter target spell. Seek a card with the same mana value as that spell. 4 mana, I mean, and most curves generally line up, so yeah, 4 mana, get a card will probably show up a little bit. Rimwall Protector. Ward 1, enters the battlefield. Each other giant or wizard you control and each other giant or wizard in your hand perpetually gains Ward 1. Cyclone Summoner, Leer. Those two cards are the cards that this cares about. If you're going into historic, Bone Crusher Giant as well. Also, I just dropped my mouse. Tenacious Pup, already did. All Runs Epiphany, better. Goldspan Dragon, better. Or correction, more balanced. With Goldspan Dragon. Cosmos Elixir, I do not think that putting Scry 1 on it will be enough to give it the boost it needs. Ashika's Chariot, honestly, I didn't see too much of a problem with the original one, so this new one, good for it. Faceless Haven, that the balance of becoming a 3/3 is fine. Ventures of Forgotten Balance, rebalance. Demi-Lich, well, you can't lightning bolt it now. Druid class, honestly, I've played this card enough that level 3 doesn't need to be reduced to 3 mana. If they wanted to boost Druid class, they should have reduced the cost of level 2. Wizard class. Honestly, Wizard class, that seems a lot better to reduce its cost for level 3, because it turns your little weenies into win conditions. So I see the rebalanced Wizards class shining more than the new Druid class. Omnath, they made it. Omnath, they probably did enough to fix it. Luminarch Aspirant, it will still see play. Just, fewer attacks. Phyleth, it has trample, and the tokens gain trample. And the tokens that you hit with the landfall trickle gain trample. Trample's fine. Good luck getting it through a Fading Hope. So, in Standard, I see the shakeups happening. I've seen talks of shakeups, but I don't think it's going to be bad. Historic shakeups, this is going to destroy Historic by making it a live format instead of a paper format. that, had digital only cards. Yeah, that ship has already sailed. And honestly, of all these rebalanced cards, the only one that sees historic play that isn't banned is All Run's Epiphany. Everything else that was rebalanced will be fine. All the new digital cards, they'll be fine. They will affect historic, but honestly, I doubt they'll destroy it. Okay, also I noticed my video froze a long time ago. So, actually no, wait. There we go. So, I think that's all I have to say for now. Honestly, I'm probably going to go back and see if this was an exhaustive mess, but it was a start and I had fun. I'll probably try something like this again, only maybe with actual arena. So I hope you all have a good night.